All right, so we'll get started. So I was talking to one of my coaching clients, and she was telling me about how the communication went wrong with the other person. Now this is about 3 years ago. 3 years ago. And I never forget it because I had a conversation today with someone and we were talking about communication. So I said, I'm gonna do a live on communication, but I'm gonna do it differently than anything you've ever heard before. Because you know me, the doctor gonna bring it different. So this client of mine three years ago reminded me of the client. The client today reminded me of the client 3 years ago. We were talking about communication. And the person was basically, she was just going over 3 years ago talking about why she didn't communicate, she was shut down. And I said, today the person reminded me a lot of that person. So I told her, I said, let me ask you a question. And we got deep into why she's that way. And y'all, that's a deeper question. But then she says, I just withdraw and I don't say anything. And then I said, okay. I said, then you don't communicate. Well, yes, I do. I said, but you don't communicate because you don't tell them what you're thinking, right? Not always. I said, remember this principle. Number one, lack of communication always leads to miscommunication. Because here's what happens to people. You don't say it and you expect something. So what happens, the reason relationships don't work is because your results don't equal your expectations. You expect something that you're not getting. Now, in communication, and let me bring that back home, because in communication, if you don't tell the person, lack of communication leads to miscommunication. If you don't tell the person, you expect them to know. Now, you expect them to know, and you expect to get an outcome from that, from them knowing. Well, they should know that I want my car cleaned. But you've never told them. You never communicated that to them. You never told them your standard or anything, but they should know. They've been around me 3 years. Now, and so you get angry after a while when he doesn't wash your car. And you're like, he should know. And it starts festering inside of you. And then it's like, he's ignoring me. He's not meeting my needs, but you've never told him your needs. You just made the assumption that he should know because one day you said, I like my car washed. Let's get busy. And so here's what happens. In many relationships that I've coached people, is the relationship ended because the expectation did not equal the results. And so you expected something that you never made public. You never told the person. You never told them it was a standard. You never told them it was something you stood for. None of that. But you just expected them to know. So you didn't communicate. So I told the person 3 years ago, I said, you have a communication problem. And your communication problem stemmed from somewhere. Just like the person who talks too much, the person who doesn't talk enough, it all stems from somewhere, because when your communication is unbalanced like that, then it comes from somewhere. And it comes from, many times it comes from you weren't able to express yourself when you were young. When you feel like people don't hear your voice. A lot of times it comes from people you believe that nobody's going to listen to you. And all of these beliefs you have are limiting beliefs that were planted somewhere. And you have to find out where those are. But even if you don't know right away, I'm going to still give you 5 things to live by, 5 rules of communication that I thought about. And I said, wow, if I could help people communicate differently, a lot of these relationships either wouldn't get that far because you would know, or some of them would work that, were supposed to work, or you thought they wouldn't work. So the first thing is this. The first rule of communication is this. Number 1, if you feel it, express it. See, here's the thing. If you feel it, you have a right to say it. You have a right. And doesn't mean that your feelings are always correct. Now listen, I didn't say because you felt it, you were right. No, I said, if you feel it, express it. Because if you feel something, the emotion you feel is an extension of the thought you have. Okay, you only conjure up emotions based on the thought you have. You have a thought, you attach emotions to that thought. Okay, and so what we do is somebody does something to you in a relationship. You have a thought about it. You attach emotions to it. I don't like that. That frustrates me. I'm overwhelmed. Whatever the emotion is, anger. Okay, whatever it is, you let it suppress. You don't hold it. You don't say it. You put it inside a box and you keep it in that box. But what you don't know is the seed that you planted inside of you grows into something. But it is your fault because lack of communication leads to miscommunication. Because you didn't say it, the other person didn't know. You're making the assumption they knew that they hurt you. You're making the assumption they knew that they're not meeting your needs. How do they know? Because you're essentially getting mad at people because they cannot read your mind. And so that's why I say, number one, the first rule is if you feel it, express it. Now, how you express it, we'll get into that at another time. Because a lot of times you express stuff, but you express it incorrectly. All right, I'm going to get into it a little bit today. But the first thing is, just remember this, y'all. If there's something, my wife taught me this. She said, if you feel something, it's valid. Doesn't make it correct. It's valid if you feel it. So when you feel something, you have a right to say it. You have a right to express it. And that's the part of communication that people really, they go in their corner and they get mad because the person didn't know what they were thinking. They get mad because the person didn't react like they wanted them to react. And then what do? They don't say anything. They shut down. Or the other person gets mad and then for whatever reasons, you never told the person what you really felt about what they said. So you don't communicate it, and thus goes back to our introduction. Lack of communication leads to miscommunication. That's number one. Number two. When you tell a person what you're thinking, okay? Number two is don't shut down the communication when things aren't going your way. Don't shut down the communication when things aren't going your way. You know, what do? So a lot of relationships don't last not because they can't communicate, but because they can't work through conflict. See, what happens in relationships, we feel like if I'm gonna have a great relationship, it's going to be devoid of conflict. And that's the absolute not truth. That's the absolute not truth. No, it's not true. Here's why. Any relationship that is good has endured conflict. It's how you work through the conflict that lets you know whether the relationship is good or not. And so when things aren't going your way in the communication, be it a business relationship, a romantic relationship, or just a friendship, the truth is that's what communication is. Working through disagreements, working through conflict, expressing how you feel, expressing your emotions toward that feeling, asking questions. Communication is the gamut of things. It is not just that we agree. That would mean that we don't have freedom of choice. That would mean that we're not independent thinkers. That would mean we're not robots. You don't want to be married to a robot, or maybe you do. Maybe you do. Maybe you want to be married to someone you can control. But the truth of the matter is, when you're communicating with someone, don't forget this, is you cannot shut down the communication just because things aren't going your way. 12 years ago, when my wife and I were going to divorce, we were going to divorce. Y'all know the story. If not, go to the Grand Canyon. I'll give you the link to the video. How $7 saved our marriage. It's a dope-ass video. And I'm telling you, y'all, and what we realized was we really weren't communicating. All we wanted to do was get our point across. All we wanted to do was win. And so when communication is not going your way, don't shut down the communication, redirect the communication. Ooh, what I say? Don't shut down the communication, redirect the communication. Because here's the thing, y'all. Many people, what happens is, that's why they don't communicate. Because when they get into an intensive communication, they cannot manage their emotions. Listen to me closely. The reason why people don't communicate a lot of times is because they cannot manage their emotions during the communication. So when you can't manage your emotions during the communication, you just choose not to communicate. But it's not the other person, but you end the relationship because you couldn't communicate. And it wasn't that. It was just that you couldn't manage your emotions during the communication. That's the reality of it. And so the second rule is don't shut down the communication, because you don't agree with what's being said. All right? That's even more reason why you continue through the communication. And so that's what my wife and I did. That's why we were able to save our relationship. And so I'm simply saying to you that, look, y'all, at the end of the day, you know what? Communication is just a tool. It's just a tool to connect. That's all. We're just trying to figure out another way to connect. Because sometimes we're not connecting. And so what we're doing is we have to recommunicate, redirect the communication so that we can connect in the relationship. Ooh, and sometimes we're not going to agree. Yo, just understand that some relationships are, you can agree to disagree. Because we don't agree doesn't mean we don't have a great relationship. It just means we're independent thinkers. That's it. And you know, I've come across so many relationships, they think they always have to agree. Me and my wife don't always agree now. You know, one of the things we laugh about our disagreement. So I can give you an example. One disagreement we have is I don't believe that kids should get a participation trophy. And, you know, like when in Little League, if everybody play football, Little League football, everybody get a trophy. The hell with that. I don't believe everybody should get a trophy. I believe what we're doing is we're rewarding mediocrity. Right? My wife is the exact opposite. I believe if they came out there and they gave their all, they should get a trophy. For what? So we laugh about it. One day it got heated just off little trophy, right? And both of us started laughing. I said, I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree. And then she was like, I'm not going to let a trophy in my relationship. A Little League trophy, you know what I'm saying? So it's just, y'all, don't end the conversation because you don't agree. Number three is another rule of communication that ends a lot of relationships. Okay? Don't listen to talk, listen to understand. Don't listen to talk, listen to understand. How many times you get into communication, you just wait for the person to finish so you can start talking. You don't hear nothing they say. You hear nothing they say. All you want to do is when you're done, or you jump in between. I've done that. I know. And y'all, now I'm listening for understanding. And there's a way that I listen nowadays but I'm telling you, I realize how many times has somebody ever said something to you? Ever said something to you that you assumed they were saying one thing? That happened with me yesterday. And you assumed that the person was saying one thing because what you heard was another thing that they were saying, right? And so you reacted to what you thought they said, right? But that happens to me. That happened to me yesterday. But I didn't end the communication, though. I kept going with communication, redirecting the communication till I actually got to what they were actually saying. Then I felt kind of stupid because I was like, well, I thought you were saying this. And I reacted to that. And that's the thing about communication. It's not always a perfect thing. You're evolving the communication, you're rotating, redirecting, all of this stuff. We think if a person said, I either agree or disagree. No, it's not the way it works. Communication is a dynamic thing. It's ever changing. We're changing the process. We're changing how we communicate because at the end of the day, we're trying to connect. You got to connect your emotions and your thoughts to the other person. All right? So that's why you keep redirecting. That's why you listen to understand, not just listen to talk. Because when we feel attacked many times, we don't care about listening anymore. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else. However, the thing that saves me is I keep talking. I keep communicating. I keep letting the other person talk till I get to the meaning. And so I keep listening. I keep redirecting. And I don't listen to just talk. I listen for understanding. Now, sometimes once I get the understanding, do I agree with it? No, I don't always agree with it, but the other person felt heard. The other person felt like, okay, I listened to them because at the end of the day, I'm not focusing on the problem. I'm focusing on the solution. Now, how we get there along the way, it might be bumpy. But look, the communication ain't always about making you feel good. Sometimes it's about solving the problem. And sometimes these hard conversations, like hard conversations around race, those are hard conversations for some people. Okay, for some people. But they are necessary. they are necessary to get to an understanding. They're necessary to get to another action. The relationships are the same way. There's some hard conversations, like, you don't sexually satisfy me. That's a hard conversation. You don't satisfy me sexually. Maybe we could do more things, but that's a hard conversation. But if you don't communicate, you're going to continue to grow frustrated. You're going to continue, that seed of frustration is still going to be in you until you talk to the person and says, here's what I'd like for you to do. Okay, I need that need met. Same thing with the guy who's out here struggling, and maybe he needs to say something, but he doesn't say it. And so that's what happens. Number 3, remember, listen, understand, not to talk. Okay, number 4, fourth rule of communication. I wrote these out, y'all. Ooh, Ken, you know nobody. See, the stuff that I write, you didn't get it out of a book. Out of that book. Number 4, understand that the sender is responsible for the message. Listen to me carefully. Some of you may disagree, but I don't care. But remember, the sender is, if you are communicating and you are sending a message, and that message starts with you, you are responsible for the message. You're responsible that the receiver gets the message. That is the reason why I tell people, you can't just, you get around people who say, I'm just me. I'm going to just say it. I'm going to just say it the way I say it, and this is what I do. This is just how I communicate. It's just me. All right? The problem with that is, if you send a message and the other person either misconstrues your message or doesn't get your message, what happens at that point? At that point, what happens is now the communication is stalled. Now the communication because the messenger, the sender who was responsible for the message did not do what was necessary to help the other person understand the message. Y'all, see, a lot of times in communication, you think the receiver is responsible for the message. No, if the message originated with me, I am responsible to the receiver for the message. That is the reason why, if something is wrong with me, if you're in a relationship and something is wrong with me, I am responsible for sending the message to the recipient to let them know what's wrong. I am responsible for that message. I am the one, the sender is responsible. And so a lot of times when you have something you have to say and you don't say it, you're the one who are negating your responsibility, especially if you want the relationship to last. If you want the relationship to last, because the receiver doesn't know the message. They don't know the message. It's like, think about it. If we were on an island and the message came to you, and you were the only one with a phone, and the message came to you, and there's 50 of us stuck on an island, who's responsible for that message? The sender, you're responsible for the message, to disseminate the message to everybody else. And so, y'all, why is it that we don't take care and don't take the necessary care and I don't know, importance of the message? Why don't we look at it like that? So when we're disseminating the message to the people we're in a relationship with, we have to think about, this message is extremely important. Even if the message originated with you in your heart, it's still that important. You're responsible. If they don't understand it this way, then you got to give it to them another way. If they don't understand it this way, because some people are like, I gave it to them and they didn't get it, oh well. I'm like, come on. If your child is in school and the teacher who's responsible for the message doesn't teach your child, they teach your child one way. Is the teacher responsible for teaching your child another way? Are they responsible for giving your child that same message in another form so that child can understand it? Yes, they are. That's the problem with the school system right now. They don't deliver the messages to the kids the way they can receive the message, y'all. When you're in a relationship, you're responsible for that message if you're the sender. And the last one, number 5, on my 5 rules of communication and dating and relationship is simply this. Focus on the message, not the messenger. See, a lot of times we can't hear a message because we're looking at the messenger. And the way you do that, the way you stop doing that is you do things like echo what the person says. Do I hear you saying this? Is this what you're saying? I said it to my wife the other day. I was like, well, hold on. Let me ask you a question. Is this what I hear you saying? Are you saying this? So what I'm doing is I'm either echoing what she said back to her, or I summarize it. I'm saying, did you say this person said that based on this? So I'm summarizing what she said. And now, y'all, what all I'm doing is looking for clarification so I can connect with her. Y'all, communication is about connection. It's about connecting with the other party to get it done. When you focus on the messenger, you never hear the message. And that's why I teach people, and this is why I teach people, look, all right, when you're delivering a message that has a whole bunch of emotion to it, don't say the message, but don't change your face while you're saying it. So we have this exercise, I help them work on it. So I say, look, if you, here's a tip. I said, say the emotion, don't show the emotion. Let me give you an example. If you're mad at your spouse and you say, you know what, honey, I'm mad at you. I'm really upset with you. And then the person says, what? What did I do? Now notice I didn't show. If I said, I'm mad, damn, I'm mad at you. Now notice what I did. I said the same thing. I'm mad at you. I'm upset with you. But if I say it like this, and what it is if you say the emotion and don't show the emotion, the other person focuses on the message and not the messenger. Y'all, because the truth is, remember, the sender's responsible for the message. Now, the receiver is responsible for echoing the message, summarizing the message. Is this what you said? Seeking clarification on the message. You have to seek, because at the end of the day, it's the receiver's part to seek clarification of the message. The sender is responsible for the message, but the receiver is responsible for seeking clarification when they don't understand the message. Hey man, that's my time with Ken Canion. I am out, and I'm the host of Love, Lust, and Lies. And until tomorrow, remember, every journey starts with one step. Take yours today. All right, that's my time. I'm out.